After undergoing a secret experiment, a young guinea pig with fire powers has to flee with her mutant father from an organization that wants to create an army of young people with superpowers. Today we're going to recap the story of the movie, Firestarter, from 1984. While walking with his daughter on his lap through the streets of New York, Andy realizes that he is being followed by agents of a secret organization called The Shop. He immediately hides in the crowd and gets into a cab to try to escape. Seeing the agents approaching, the driver is paralyzed, so Andy uses his psychic powers to force him to accelerate the vehicle on the way to the airport. Years ago, Andy took part in an experiment run by the government's Department of Scientific Intelligence, in which he and other young people were injected with a secret compound developed by Dr. Joseph Wanless. 2 days after the experiment, all the students who had volunteered would be released from observation and given a good sum of money. That day, Andy met Vicky and instantly fell in love with her. A few minutes after the substance was injected into their bodies, the young people began to hallucinate and Vicky realized that she was being able to read Andy's thoughts. As the couple looked at each other hand in hand, the other students taking part in the experiment began to struggle in their beds, causing panic among the medical team. Arriving at the airport, Charlie talks to her father and tries to understand why they are being chased. With no money left, Andy has to steal coins from a phone booth to get the money he needs to escape with his daughter. While walking through the airport, Charlie sees a woman crying while talking to one of the guards. Apparently, she's pregnant, but the man refuses to take the child and says he's not ready to get married. Every time he uses his powers, Andy gets severe headaches and his nose starts to bleed. Because of this, he avoids putting his abilities into practice as much as possible and only uses them as a last resort. While helping his father collect the coins, Charlie realizes how scared the pregnant girl is to be abandoned by her boyfriend and decides to take revenge. The girl then uses her powers to make the man's boots burst into flames and he has to run to the bathroom to put out the fire with water from the toilet. When he realizes what has happened, Andy takes his daughter and flees the airport before anyone notices that Charlie was responsible for starting the fire. When she realizes what she has done, the girl feels guilty, but her father tries to reassure her and congratulates her on being able to control her powers a little more, because every time she has lost control she has caused a major disaster. A few minutes later, Charlie reveals that she can feel the evil men approaching and her father decides to hide with her on the lawn. However, when the girl jumps into his lap, they both go rolling down the other lane and Andy faints. Just before they are hit by a truck, Charlie manages to wake up her father and they both throw themselves into the corner of the track. After the scare, they get up and Andy walks with his daughter on his back until he finds a hotel where they can stay. When Vicky was still alive, the three of them lived together as a happy family and Andy always did his best to teach Charlie how to control her powers. However, when something irritated her, she lost control and once set fire to the gloves her mother used to cook with. Since then, Charlie has never been able to forget this incident and her mother's screams continue to torment her mind. A few weeks later, when he got home from work, Andy realized that his wife and daughter weren't at home and started looking desperately for them. After looking in every corner, he found traces of blood in the laundry room and then found Vicky's body in the cupboard. Terrified, Andy set out to find his daughter and used his powers to prevent the girl from being taken by the shop's agents. Before he left, he blinded Leon and Kenny to get revenge, because it was those guys who eliminated his wife. The next morning, at the shop headquarters, Captain Hollister is visited by John Rainbird and Dr. Wanless. According to the scientist, Andy and his daughter are the greatest threat the American nation has ever seen and need to be eliminated as soon as possible. Of the 10 volunteers who took part in the experiment, 8 perished, so Captain Hollister decided to eliminate Andy's family in order to wipe out all traces of the research he was conducting. However, the man managed to escape with his daughter and Wanless claims that Charlie's powers tend to increase more and more as her body develops. Therefore, the best way to ensure that the girl doesn't pose a risk to anyone is to capture and eliminate her while she is still learning to control her abilities, because later on she will be invincible. Without knowing exactly what Charlie's potential for destruction will be in a few years' time, the doctor says that she may have the ability to create a nuclear explosion or even split the planet in two. Hearing this, Hollister sees the opportunity to create human weapons to defend his country and asks if Wanless could create more children like Charlie to be trained. However, the scientist says he will not carry out any more human experiments and leaves upset. After having breakfast, Andy and Charlie hitch a ride with a truck driver to the neighboring town where Andy's father lived before he perished. As they pass along the highway, the father and daughter are spotted by some agents who have been sent to capture them and Bates contacts the rest of his team to inform them of the license plate of the truck they are in. During the journey, Irv Manders invites the pair to lunch at his house and Andy accepts. A few hours later, They arrive at the farm where Irv lives with his wife and are warmly welcomed by Norma. After lunch, Irv asks his wife to go and play with Charlie in the yard while he talks to Andy to find out who he really is, as he has realized that the man is lying about his identity. At that moment, Andy reveals that he is on the run from government agents who want to capture his daughter in order to experiment on her. After feeding the chickens, Charlie goes to meet her father and reveals that the agents are approaching the farm. Frightened, the girl begins to lose control of her powers and causes the temperature in the room to rise. Seeing that the family is trapped, Irv says he'll take his gun to try to stop the agents, but Charlie says she'll be able to get rid of all of them. Although he doesn't want to hurt anyone, Andy knows that this is super important, so he allows his daughter to use her powers to eliminate the agents if necessary. While Andy tries to convince all those men to leave before they get hurt, Irv appears with his rifle and orders them to leave his farm, as they are trespassing on private property without a warrant. During the discussion, Charlie becomes stressed and the temperature in the place begins to rise. At that moment, the agents join forces to capture Andy and Irv tries to stop them, but ends up being shot. Furious at seeing her father being taken away, the young woman sets fire to the agents' bodies and then blows up their vehicles. Seeing some of those men being eliminated while others flee in despair, Andy tries to calm his daughter down and asks her to stop the attack. When the agents leave, Irv asks Andy to take the jeep behind the barn and escape with his daughter before they return to capture them. The next morning, after driving all night, the father and daughter finally reach their destination and hide the car in the woods a few kilometers away from Knoxville. After a few minutes walk, Andy and Charlie arrive at the lake house and the girl is happy to know that she now has a new home. After what happened on the farm, Andy hopes that the agents from the shop will give up on capturing them. In addition, he plans to write a letter to the newspapers to tell them everything that has happened, because he believes that if the news is spread by the media, the government will have to leave them alone. After refusing to continue working on the experiments proposed by the government, Dr. Wanless had his house invaded by John and was cowardly eliminated during the night. Thanks to an undercover agent in Knoxville, Hollister manages to discover the whereabouts of his targets and is informed that Andy has sent some letters. After eliminating the scientist, John goes to the captain's office and says he will do whatever it takes to capture Charlie. That afternoon, after picking up all the mail, the letter carrier leaves town to deliver the letters to the recipients, but he is stopped by two men on the road, who ask for his help to start their car battery. However, when the letter carrier gets out of the vehicle, John attacks him and steals all the letters to stop Andy's envelopes from reaching the newspapers. The pair then head for the lake house and the mercenary prepares a tranquilizer dart to shoot Charlie as soon as the opportunity arises. Meanwhile, the girl and her father are preparing to go to the New York Times headquarters, as Andy wants to make sure they have received his letter. But Charlie is tired of running away and all she wants is to live the life of a normal child. The girl says that even if she is in danger, she will never set anyone on fire again, because she doesn't want to hurt anyone else. To increase the accuracy of his aim, John decides to climb a tree and patiently waits for Andy and Charlie to leave the house. While walking across the wooden bridge, the girl is shot and her father rushes to her aid. At that moment, Andy is also hit and collapses next to Charlie. When they realize that the two are unconscious, the other agents come out of hiding and walk towards them. This time, everyone is wearing antipyretic clothing to protect themselves from Charlie's powers and, after John picks up the girl, Bates and his colleagues take John to the shop headquarters. When he wakes up, Andy realizes that his daughter has been captured and is furious, but Dr. Pinchot says she's fine. Desperate to see Charlie, the mutant attacks the doctor and tries to escape, but ends up being captured. To prevent another escape attempt, Pinchot decides to apply a sedative to his arm and asks the nurses to take him back to bed. Meanwhile, Charlie is locked in another room and is visited by Captain Hollister, who explains why he took the girl there. After assuring her father that he is fine, the man says that he is very interested in Charlie's abilities and would like to do some tests to find out how far her power goes. However, the girl says she will never use her powers to hurt anyone again, so the captain decides to let her rest before trying to convince her to cooperate with his research. That afternoon, John disguises himself as a cleaner to break into Charlie's room unnoticed and finds her playing video games. At this point, he tries to make friends with the girl, but is completely ignored, as Charlie refuses to talk to anyone who isn't her father. Meanwhile, Andy is being interrogated by the captain, who says that he will only be able to see his daughter if he agrees to take some tests. After Hollister and the doctor leave the room, a guinea pig appears and reveals that he doesn't know what the experiment is about. According to the man, Dr. Pinchot only asked him to go into that room to talk to Andy, not knowing that his mind would be invaded. After entering his guinea pig's head, Andy begins to give commands, but his orders are ignored because he is too weak to use his powers. Frustrated with the results of the test, Hollister decides to focus all his efforts on Charlie and orders John to do everything in his power to win the girl's trust. Every day from then on, the old man will clean her room, even though he knows the place isn't dirty. At this point, the young woman becomes suspicious of his true intentions and isolates herself in her room. That night, during the storm, the power goes out and all the lights in the house go out. Faced with complete darkness, John starts shouting and asks Charlie to open the door, because he's scared. When she sees the terrified man trying to get out, Charlie is moved and tries to reassure him, because without electricity the card used to unlock the door won't work. At this point, the girl approaches him to talk, in an attempt to understand the origin of all that fear. Then John reveals that he fought in the Vietnam War and ended up falling into a trap set by the enemy army. That day, he was captured and thrown into a dark hole in the ground. According to John, it was as if he was being buried alive and, since then, the man has developed a dread of the dark. Hearing this story, Charlie sympathizes with John's pain and he begins to develop a fondness for the girl. Knowing that Charlie is worried about her father, John says he'll try to get into Andy's room to check on him. The mercenary then says that the only way Charlie can regain her freedom is by doing what Captain Hollister asked, but the girl is afraid to use her powers again. The last time she released her flames, several men were eliminated and the girl blames herself for it. She is also afraid of losing control of her powers, but begins to rethink her decision when John tells her that this is the only way for her and her father to get out of there. When the power comes back on and the lights come on, Charlie hugs John and thanks him for keeping her company. Noticing that the girl is drowsy, the mercenary puts her to bed and is happy that he has succeeded in his mission to win her trust. The next morning, Charlie agrees to take part in the experiments developed by Dr. Pinchot and is placed in a room with several electrodes attached to her head. The girl's mission is to set fire to some pieces of wood that are inside a tray, but before the flames appear, the temperature in the room rises rapidly. Then a large amount of smoke begins to rise, until the entire tray combusts and explodes. At this point, even the water bath that was being used to generate humidity in the room starts to catch fire and the water boils over. Seeing this display of power, Hollister is impressed, as he has never seen anything like it before. The man intends to use the recordings to present his project to the court and is stunned when he realizes that his co-workers aren't as excited as he is. The truth is that Charlie only agreed to take part in that experiment because she believed the promise that she could see her father, but the captain never intended to let that happen. Dr. Pinchot's biggest worry is that if father and daughter meet, Andy could convince the girl to destroy the whole place. So they must never see each other again. While the captain and his men decide Charlie's future, the girl manages to escape from the room and everyone panics when they discover that she is on the loose in the mansion. Immediately, Hollister orders the scientists to go after her, but none of the team are willing to risk their lives to try and capture her. Contrary to what everyone imagines, after fleeing, Charlie goes back to her room and begins to cry, because she feels bad for having broken the promise she made to herself about never using her powers again. After making sure that the girl is safe in her room, Hollister goes to visit Andy, who is deeply saddened by not being able to see his daughter. At that moment, the captain hands him some medicine and asks why his powers have diminished since he arrived at the base. Immediately, Andy claims that those drugs are causing him to be controlled, so his powers are not activated. However, when Hollister leaves, the mutant walks to the bathroom and hides from the security cameras to throw the pills away. As the days go by, John gets closer and closer to Charlie and wins her trust. The man makes a point of taking her out for fun and every afternoon they go horse riding together. While on their walk, John convinces the young woman to take part in one more experiment before meeting her father and, this time, Charlie sets fire to the cement blocks in the walls. The temperature is so high inside the room that even the metal door and the measuring devices begin to melt, causing a huge explosion. After blowing up a concrete wall, Charlie directs the fire at a tub of ice and manages to put it out. After carrying out the experiment and following the captain's orders, Charlie starts shouting and demands that Hollister keep his end of the bargain. That afternoon, Hollister goes for a walk with Andy around the mansion and reveals that he is making arrangements to send him to a retirement home in Hawaii. When he hears this, Andy accepts the offer and says he's excited about the trip which, according to Hollister, will take place that evening. At this point, Andy manages to invade Hollister's mind and orders the captain to inform the pilot that both he and Charlie will also be going on the trip. Andy's plan consists of fleeing with his daughter when the plane stops to refuel in California and, before saying goodbye to the captain, the mutant orders him to deliver a note to Charlie. What Andy didn't imagine was that, after reading that note, Charlie would share her escape plan with John. Just then, a security guard called Mike approaches and reveals that he has been assigned to take Charlie to the stables at 8 in the evening. After investigating the details of the escape plan, John hides in the stables just before Charlie arrives with Mike. When she gets there, the girl uses her powers to scare the security guard away and threatens to set him on fire if he doesn't leave. When the man leaves, John decides to call the girl and reveals that he is hiding on the second floor. However, just as Charlie is going upstairs to meet her friend, Andy appears and the girl runs into her father's arms. As they embrace, John watches from afar as he prepares to shoot. After talking to Andy, Charlie discovers that she has been tricked, because the man she thought was her friend is the same one who captured her. When she discovers that John has been lying all this time, the girl is disappointed and asks why he deceived her. While hiding among the bales of hay, the mercenary says that he can't let them go, because Charlie represents a great danger to society. John orders the girl to go upstairs, otherwise he will shoot Andy. To ensure her father's safety, the girl decides to do as he says, so Andy orders the captain to eliminate the old man and runs to get his daughter. However, when he realizes that Hollister is trying to eliminate him, John doesn't think twice about shooting him and puts a hole in his head. At that moment, Andy manages to get inside the man's head and orders him to jump from the second floor. After falling to the ground, John shoots the mutant and Charlie despairs at the sight of her father bleeding. Furious, the girl rebels and John decides to shoot her. However, Charlie manages to explode the bullet before she is hit and, at that moment, the man's body goes up in flames. When they realize that the girl has disappeared, all the security guards who work at the shop go out to look for her. After seeing John perish in flames, Charlie runs to her father and Andy asks the girl to run away, even if she has to use her powers to burn all her enemies. After saying his last words to his daughter, Andy ends up dying from the amount of blood he has lost and Charlie says goodbye to him. Seeing the guards approaching, the girl bursts open the stable door and frees the horses so that they can escape before the whole place is destroyed. Charlie then walks slowly towards the men and they all flee in terror at the sight of her approaching. When she spots Dr. Pinchot trying to escape in a golf cart, the young woman sends a fireball in his direction and blows up the vehicle. Afraid that they might be next, some guards try to shoot the girl, but none of their bullets are able to hit her. Instead, they end up being followed by fire and burned alive. Soon after, other security guards come forward to try to stop the threat and also end up suffering the same fate. Seeing a car full of armed soldiers approaching, Charlie decides to blow up the vehicle and easily manages to get rid of her enemies. After eliminating Bates with a fireball, Charlie blows up the approaching police helicopter and finally sets fire to the mansion along with all the staff who are hiding inside. As she listens to people's cries of despair, the girl starts to cry, because she never wanted to hurt anyone, but she felt obliged to do it in order to escape. After destroying the entire organization, Charlie hitches a ride back to the farm where Irv and Norma live. When they see the girl, the couple run to hug her and Charlie feels relieved. That day, the young girl gains a new family and asks for Irv's help to put her father's plan into practice. The following week, she manages to reach the headquarters of the New York Times and finally gets the chance to share her story with the media. So what did you think of this movie? Leave it in the comments below. And if you liked the video, like and subscribe for more movie recaps. See you next time.